Ken, one of the greatest challenges we face as caregivers is that there's so many fraudsters and scammers coming after our loved ones. What's the scope of the fraud problem that our senior adults are facing?
Well, it's a huge problem. There are many avenues for fraud, and one of the major ones is the telephone. The FBI, their Internet Crime Center, keeps track of statistics about this, and their 2020 report on elder fraud, their annual report, said that senior adults were defrauded out of more than $1 billion in 2020, and that the average loss was between $9,000 and $10,000, and that more than 2,000 Americans had been defrauded of more than $100,000. Now, that's stuff that actually got reported to the FBI. More recently, Truecaller, which is one of the popular apps for managing calls and blocking them, their US spam and scam report for the most recent 12 months pegged the losses at almost $30 billion US. Now, that would be not just seniors, but all callers. And as many as almost 60 million Americans, 23% of Americans. And I did the math on that, and that averages out to more than $100 per person in the USA that lost, the losses to criminal scammers. So it's a huge problem, and unfortunately appears to be a growing one in spite of various legislative efforts to try to curb that.
In what ways specifically are these fraudsters and scammers hurting our families?
Well, first of all, of course, is the financial harm that we just discussed, but also fear. The fear of losing money to the scammers makes folks hesitant to pick up the phone. And so there's a twin to the fraud problem, and it's isolation. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that isolation is harmful to humans. And again, the fraudsters are causing isolation by making people afraid to pick up their phone, afraid of becoming a crime victim, and a fear of losing their independence. Because that's actually what happened when I first started researching these solutions, was several years ago, not for my own parents, but for a friend, where one of my wife's close friends, her parents were living in their own apartment. Still, her dad was beginning to suffer some dementia issues. And by the time they realized what was going on, they'd been scammed out of a significant portion of their life savings. And before I was able to find a technology-based solution, one of her siblings had moved them from their independent apartment into that sibling's home and felt forced to take away their telephone from them to prevent future losses to fraud, because it wasn't his fault. He couldn't help it. And they are very tricky. I've come close a couple times myself to getting tricked. But for the parents, all of a sudden, now they don't have a phone. Their friends can't reach them directly. They have to call the son or daughter. If they want to call, they got to go ask to use the phone. So there's a daily reminder even of, I can't be trusted to have a telephone. And that's it's harmful. And again, emotionally, as well as the isolation that causes. So one of the major causes of falls is a senior adult rushing to answer the phone. Hadn't occurred to me before, but they're in a hurry. They want to get there while it's still ringing, and they may be transversing various transitions of materials and stuff. And of course, much of the time, that call is it's a robocall or a scammer that's trying to reach them. Far too many times. So, it's a new risk I hadn't even been aware of until just recently.
So talk to me about how you're helping to solve these heartbreaking challenges with Caregiver Technology Solutions.
My goal is to defeat both isolation and fraud with the technology solutions that I've identified and adopted. These are things that I helped my own parents with, and since then, others, friends and relatives with. And to be able to stay connected, but to stay connected safely. And to age in place with dignity, essentially, is part of the goal.
I believe so much in the value of dignity for our loved ones, feeling of self-worth, and even their cognition.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, isolation is harmful to cognitive ability. no question about it. And so maintaining those connections and the solutions I've identified, I went and found commercially available, things that are out there. I wasn't creating things from scratch, but really it was about identifying technologies that were able to be configured in such a way as to be really useful for family caregivers and for senior adults, especially those who are dealing with dementia. Although again, as tricky as these scammers are, all of us are at risk, quite frankly. And for the caregivers, I've designed or created online courses and implementers guides to just help them be able to just step right through the process of configuring this in an optimal way to protect their loved one according to their current level of need.
Okay, let's get into the nitty gritty. Talk to me about some of the specifics of these solutions that you've put together at CTS.
One of them is simply what I call the connected family photo frame. And it's just taking an Amazon Fire tablet, loading a particular slideshow software on it called Photo that's available in the Amazon store, and then configuring that in a way so that just as soon as they turn on that tablet, the show starts automatically. They unplug it, it can stop or not. But when they plug it back, so it's a full tablet. So if they want to take a Zoom call or check things on the web or listen to a movie or something, when they're done using the tablet as a tablet and they put it back on the stand and plug it in, this software can detect that and just restart the slideshow. And for me, I did not live with either my folks or my in-laws, but I've always been the family techie. And finding something that could be easily supported remotely, because I didn't always live nearby, was important. So this was something I actually put this together as Christmas presents for my mom and my in-laws. And essentially the mechanism was I created a shared photo album and then invited family members to join that album and then contribute photos. And it was so easy. And I actually had one of my nieces, when I asked her about this, she had been a professional photographer earlier in her life. She started crying. She said, because over and over, she said, when I took that picture, I said, I should print a copy and send it to grandma. I never did. But once I had this solution in place, and I got the email notifications and things, that's part of the online course, just a template for people able to implement. So once I had this, I took that photo, I just hit the share button, share to the shared album, choose Grandma Betty's name. And she knew 15 minutes later, it's going to show up on the screen in her room. At the hospice house where mom spent the last couple months of her life, one of the hospice nurses said, I'm going to make my daughter figure out how to do this. But yeah, and again, it's, right now I'm offering that course free. I mean, someday I'd like to charge a little bit of money for it or something maybe. But again, this is using a commercially available technology, a few dollars and a little bit of technical knowledge. And then now I provide guidance that you can get from Caregiver Technology Solutions to implement that. And that guidance is free at this point. So, and one of the things, not only did it make sharing easier, it almost became like a private Facebook group kind of for our family, because everyone who's contributed, I get a notification. Anytime a niece added a photo, I get a notification on my phone. And also any Android or Amazon tablet could run the same software. So like we have one running by our microwave right now that has that same photo show. I mean, we all could have those in our homes. So it became like a shared connected family photo album. Really cool. And again, very inexpensive to implement, but also a part of kind of protecting mom from fraud is before this, she was constantly going into Facebook to see what was going on with the kids, grandkids, and great grandkids. Once she had this, because it was readily adopted by all of us, those photos just showed up there. She didn't have to put herself at the risk of being online with those other tools. It's just the photos show up there. Yeah.
Let's dig deeper. What other products and solutions?
What I think the most important solution I'm offering right now is built on top of UMA Telo 4G. If you're familiar with home voice over IP systems, this is one of the top rated solutions for the last 9 years. They got hundreds of thousands of lines in place. What made it suitable as a caregiver solution is that the whole thing can be managed remotely via either a web interface or a smart app on the phone. And it also has, the main thing is, but in terms of blocking fraudsters, is it can identify 4 different classes of calls coming in, ones that are anonymous, ones that are known robocallers, ones that are known scammers and suspected scammers, and then calls that look legitimate. You can determine right in the web interface what happens to each of those class of calls. Do I let them through and ring the phone? Do I send them to voicemail? Do I give them a "you've been blocked" message? Or do I, what I like to call, I send them to ring forever hell, where those suspected calls or the known bad calls, the scammer, it just rings and rings and rings, but it never rings mom's phone. And so the normal way, thanks. Yeah. The normal way I configure that is send all the known bad people to just ring, ring, ring. At the most protective level, only let the people on mom's contact list through to ring the phone. And then what look like legitimate calls, send them to voicemail. And when that voicemail happens, then I, as a caregiver, the app on my phone, I get a notification, new voicemail from mom. I can listen to it. I can actually add that person right to mom contact list if appropriate. And I can call that person back and say, "Hey, Aunt Ruth, I saw you tried to call mom. Great. Please give her another call," and that'll ring through to her now. There's one other thing that especially about staying connected, and that is with the UMA solution I've chose, it actually uses a 4G cellular signal to carry the calls. And so truly, anywhere you have a power plug where there's 4G cellular signal, you can take your home telephone with you, your phone number and your phone device. And so like when mom would go to rehab, you can unplug the one from home, plug it in at rehab. Coming out of rehab, if you go moving in with a child for a few weeks, because you're really not ready to be back home on your own, just plug it in at the child's house.
And you have the security of it being UMA.
Yep. And again, it's a widely deployed, very popular solution. I mean, you can buy it at Best Buy and on Amazon online and many other places, eBay, all kinds of places. But if people buy it through me, then I include the code to unlock the implementer's course and implementer's guide at no additional charge.
Great.
And there are other solutions I've identified that can even be more restrictive, like the grant pad, if you're familiar with that.
Sure.
There are things where the only people that even can email or text you or call you, they have to have that specific app on their phone and be in your contact list. So that's even more restrictive. And so for some families, the solutions like that will make sense. But this was one that let mom keep her telephone and stay in connection with her, contact with her friends, whilst dramatically reducing the risk of fraud. Because even as a person who had 25 years of telecommunications management, IT management, it took me hours and hours of trying to find something that would work as a caregiver solution. So once I'd found those things, said I'd like to diffuse that knowledge. And as I started contacting the solution providers, it was actually UMA that came back. And initially I thought I want to help people in my community, but the VP of marketing at UMA appreciated what I was doing. Actually, he had close family members also scammed. And he came back and said, and set up what became basically a national partner agreement.
Great.
For me, actually, for USA and Canada. He said, I don't have anyone else on my team that cares as much as you do about care and is ready to, we can't dedicate someone full-time to this, but we'd like to enable you to foster a network solution and market this to caregivers all across, USA and Canada.
That leads to talking about your network of independent caregiver techs. That's fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Basically, I want to enable people that are already helping others to be able to do well while doing good. To make an income and through my agreement with UMA for someone who would implement these solutions for others. Once it's been in service for 90 days, UMA will send me a check, and through me, send $70 for each of those systems that got implemented. And on top of that, then they could either charge or not charge for their assistance they're providing directly to folks. I think it's a great fit for people who already care about our caregivers themselves, or our like home tech services companies, that provide tech support to, Wi-Fi and laptops and desktops, to add this as another income stream for them, where again, they could charge for the implementation services, but also again, after 90 days in service, have a check come through, a commission check through me from UMA for those systems. So that's the basic model. At this point, I hope to identify many more solutions along the way that would add, because different solutions fit different requirements, but to be able to help the families in their communities with the most appropriate solutions for them.